We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Our last board member has just arrived in the parking lot.
All right, am I on here? Oh, are we ready to go? Hey, Gary, how are you? Are you ready, Shelby? Okay, good. So then we can call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. This is the, what's the date? April 11th meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals. We are a volunteer advisory board appointed by the City Commission. Do you want to call the roll?
Yes. Sylvester?
Here.
Wark?
Here.
Holer?
Here.
Vanden Hamburg?
Here.
McReynolds?
Here.
Excellent. All right, so for each of the public hearings tonight, public comments will be accepted during the times indicated on the meeting's agenda. Community members may call 888-382-9556 during the public comment period, where they will enter a queue and will be prompted to offer their comments in turn. Callers will be commenting live. They are not able to leave a recorded message. All right, we've all got the agenda. Any changes or announcements with respect to the original agenda?
No changes or announcements tonight.
Fantastic. All right, so first up is acceptance of last month's minutes. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve them?
I approve.
A second?
Second.
And that would be Mr. Wark. Any discussion? Excellent. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I heard no. We all said aye.
Yes.
So we don't need to get into the not approving. All right. So the meeting procedure goes like this. For each of the requests, the secretary or whoever's sitting in her spot tonight will read the application into the public record. The applicant or representative will then have 10 minutes to provide their comments. I'll just say 10 minutes seems like a lot of time, but it frequently is not. So I would say get to your points. That's the most important thing. Make sure when you come up, you're giving us your name, and you're also signing in and giving your address at the podium there. That's needed for the record. All right, following that, the public will be invited to comment on the application. They will also sign in and state their name and address, and then they will present their comments within a 3-minute time limit, which, as I said, if 10 minutes is not a lot, neither is 3. Those in favor are invited to speak first. Those opposed second. Then we'll hear any call-ins. After this, we'll close the public hearing on that particular request, and the board will then conduct what is called a finding of fact. This is where the board states what they feel are the facts of the request. The board must approve the finding of fact. I'm going to cross out something from my script. Therefore, the first vote you hear is not a ruling on the request, but an acceptance of the finding of fact. Following this, the board discusses the request in order to determine a ruling. During this period, the board reserves the right to ask questions of persons who have already spoken, even after the public comment portion is closed. Once discussion is ended, the board will move on to a roll call vote of approving, denying the applicant's request. Oh, I suppose somewhere in here the staff makes comments as well, too. I got to get that in here. Staff makes comments. Please be aware, a full board consists of 6 members. Looks like we're 5 tonight. You still need 4, though, to grant a non-use or a use variance. All right. So, who's playing secretary tonight? Is that Beth? Excellent. Would you please read the first application for the record?
Sure. An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by Simple AG LLC at 1367 Portage Street and 903 East Stockbridge in the neighborhood Node District. The applicant is requesting a dimensional variance from Chapter 50, 7.2, 7.2-1 to allow for 32 off-street parking spaces where 16 off-street spaces is the maximum permitted per the zoning ordinance for this marijuana retailer.
Thank you. Does the applicant, or I suppose the representative, want to come up and sign in and introduce themselves? Make sure you give your address. Ooh. Not yet.
James what?
There we go. Say it again.
James Haas.
James Haas.
And feel free to adjust that microphone so it's to the right height,
Absolutely.
because our viewing audience can't hear any of the audio if we're not
Well,
speaking into the microphone.
I will hunch a little bit. I apologize. My name is James Haas. I'm the CEO of Simple AG. I'm here with my partner, Darcy Fankhauser, also an owner, and then Tyler Bordeaux from Mitten State Engineering. As described, we are seeking a variance for an additional 16 parking spaces at 1367 Portage Street. Currently, when we started the project, there was, if you guys are or are not familiar, it was at the corner of Stockbridge and Portage, where the Rent-A-Center was, and maybe 5 or 6 abandoned houses. At that time, there was quite a bit of plight. I mean, we've had a lot of issues since we did the demo, kind of reducing it down to a 5,000 square foot footprint. We demoed probably about 10,000 square feet of abandoned kind of apartments and property. And since that time, you know, when we've kind of worked with SWAT to allow them in to kind of do their training within the building before we did the demo. And they were kind of brought to our attention that this was a high crime kind of corner, and how excited they were that it was getting some economic development. So we are very happy to be a contributing member to a good community. And so as we did that demo, we realized we kind of opened up a lot of parking, and, you know, through the ordinance, you know, from our square footage size, we got about 6,000 square feet of new asphalt that we could put down on the site. But our site, you know, as it has serviced those areas, has, I believe, 3 different egresses onto it, and it goes from Portage all the way down Stockbridge, about maybe 5 lots. So right now there's about 4 lots of pretty, you know, an eyesore of paving, which was once striped in the past. It's all beat up now, all wavy. So our intent was to take that eyesore out and put in proper parking, you know, a nice, beautiful kind of curbed and manicured with landscaping a parking lot. You know, we did get the letter from the city saying that, you know, at this time you guys are preferring us to kind of present the problem on site. So once we're built, we need more parking, you know, to come back. So we do understand it's a little bit of an uphill battle right now, but, you know, I think our main concerns with some of the things that we read from the response I think first is there was suggested, there is a lot of parking around us. To the north, there is a fairly big parking lot that our neighbor owns. Across the street, Portage is another public parking lot that people can park in and walk over to us. Our main concern is safety. Like I had mentioned when we've been building and kind of having the police, and we've gone up there quite a few times to take people, out of the buildings, and the police have worked very well, hand in hand with us. They have my cell phone, so I've gotten a lot of calls that our property manager should come up and take care of the problem. So our concern is safety for our employees and our staff. In the winter when it gets a little dark at 5 o'clock or 5 p.m., we don't want people crossing over a very busy Portage Road. And we also don't want in our with the cannabis dispensary, there are a lot of young people that work there, male and female, and we don't want to have any situations where they're walking or feel unsafe working for us. So that's one of our primary concerns. Again, like I had mentioned, the existing maybe 15,000 square feet of parking is all chopped up right now, unstriped, and we're just looking to use a piece of that to go from 16 to 32. And the rest of the area, kind of in our site plan, would be a green space. And that also, a part of that in our new plan is sloping our, our water retention into a pond. And so we could keep our water on site, let it, for a 100-year storm, have it there, and then when it goes into the city sewer and water, it's already pre-treated, and we're not going to have a lot of overflow from the water. Our staff right now, with our 16 spots from our original plan, we have 10 point of, you guys look, okay, yeah. We have about 10 point of sales. So those are, where you transact, a cash register. And then we have a manager, a receptionist, people working in back in inventory. So we plan to have about 13 to 15 staff members in our store at any given moment. And that's not including the staff change. When we go from, we might have 6 people leaving, 6 people coming in. So we're already going to consume all of our spots and maybe have 1 or 2 only for customers. And our big fear is that people are going to start parking on the unstriped area. And again, that's a pretty choppy little area, and we don't want to have any slip and falls. Obviously we can't plow it because that just basically become a usage. And so we're very concerned of people parking on that kind of rough area. And I know the city had drove around looking at other dispensaries, kind of seeing how they fulfilled their parking lot. We do think we're a little bit different. We are a high volume store. In our other locations in New Buffalo, we have 75 parking stalls. We have 2 stores in New Buffalo. One has 75, one has 50. We have a store in Ravenna, Ohio, where we have 30 plus parking stalls, and we use every single one of them. In Pentwater, Michigan, we have a store. We have 40 stalls, and we use a lot of those as well. And then we have also a store in Grand Haven. It's part of a strip center, so our parking is pretty good there, but we also share it with a D&W. And we haven't had any issues, but there's probably about 80 spots in front of us. We also use curbside, and so obviously we want those to be dedicated spots. So if we have the majority of our spots are consumed by our employees, it's very limited for customers to park and come in, and that kind of precludes us from using any sort of curbside where we, people will park in a stall, they'll have ordered online, and we bring the product out to them. And again, a little bit of the safety issue and kind of the beautification and just being good neighbors. We want to keep all the cars coming in because we are on the edge of the Edison neighborhood and there are a lot of houses around us. So we want to keep as much of the parking and the commercial activity to the corner of Stockbridge and Portage. And again, with the parking that's there now, that goes all the way to the house, all the way down Stockbridge, right up against the house. So that's where the pond would be. And some of the green space. So we want to keep as much of the commercial activity away from the houses as possible because we are going to put a privacy fence up there. But while we do want to have a successful business, we also want to be good neighbors. So we are, like I mentioned before, we are surrounded by parking. The neighbor to the north does not really want to share any parking with us. There's a winery and there is quite a bit there, but there's a fence. And we've also talked about having egresses and connecting the lots. There hasn't been a lot of reciprocation on that. So it kind of feels like we are in our corner. So I think I'll have, in the final 2.5 minutes, have Tyler kind of come up. He has done has some information from like a national study of traffic to what to expect at a corner like ours, because that Stockbridge and Portage is obviously a heavy corridor of traffic. I believe there's 20 to 30,000 cars going by a day, and that's why we chose this selection. And I think as Tyler kind of goes through, you'll kind of see that the outside of even our analysis, the independent analysis would say that we would probably need even more than 32. But again, we're trying to find a nice middle ground.
Thanks, Jim. I'll sign in here real quick. As Jim said, I'm Tyler Bordeaux, civil engineer, worked through the site plan that got approved and then helping these guys through the variance here. So I have a ITE, trip generation, that I ran for the building. So ITE, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a national traffic study of estimated cars coming in and out for this use. So it goes down the list of restaurants, bars, and for their use for cannabis retail here. So I ran it for what they're planning on doing here, and it's estimating the average that they could see 50 to 92 vehicles on a peak day, or peak hour, excuse me. So that'd be a peak hour that they'd have 52 to 92 vehicles in a given hour. So the unique part about cannabis retail that I've seen is it's kind of ran like a pharmacy. So each seller and each buyer, it's kind of like a relationship. They come in and they all have to be together and they have to follow that person. And if there's no one available, they have to sit and wait until the next person's available. So that kind of leads to larger wait times and obviously more traffic coming into these places. So I got 20 seconds left. I'll be available if you guys have any questions related to me, but appreciate you guys' time.
Sure, and then you can decide if you have any other questions hanging out there. So, yeah, I appreciate the rundown on everything, and I have met and talked with their staff on multiple occasions about this parking variance and what would be, trying to get that number down to something that was workable, which we came close. They also did an admirable job of reaching out to the neighbor to the north that owns a large surface parking lot. However, they're not ready to lease any spaces at this point. I'm hopeful that will change at some point in the future because it is a large underutilized parking lot. So, what is significant about this area is it was part of the rezoning that occurred last fall, and it is a neighborhood node, which is more of a building forward design, which was part of the reason why staff was very pleased when this organization came forward and wanted to repurpose the building and keep the building up near the frontage of the property. We were hoping they would basically expand the building and put an addition on it and fill it all the way to the corner, but that didn't happen. But we still have a building along Portage Street, just not up to the property line on Stockbridge. But being a neighborhood node, what that means is these are commercial areas that the city is working on building out to be more walkable commercial hubs for the neighborhood, for those that live in apartments within the neighborhood node, and so overbuilding surface parking, it goes directly against that movement, to make it more densely developed. And then, of course, the one thing that was rightfully so pointed out, that because this business is not in operation yet, it's hard to truly gauge the level of parking deficiency And, so we talked a little bit about that in our meetings. But looking at the special circumstances, what was indicated was the building size, that it's a little larger than a lot of the other marijuana facilities around the city, the retailers specifically. And it is slightly larger. A lot of them are closer to the 3,000 square foot range. However, what we're finding out is because there's a fair amount of competition in the city, these locations are not overloaded with customers at any one time. And, so even though this new building will have the ability to have up to 10 transaction stations, it may take some time to build to that level of actively using all those, or those might not all be in use except for during peak times. And this project is, because obviously it's, they're talking about, what their, steps of development. So this did go through site plan review already, and that was in the staff report. And unfortunately, this parking issue did not come up at that point. If it had, it would have been something, well worth discussing then, and not after the approval's already taken place. But so, anyways, that being what it is, we're now here tonight to evaluate this and look at, look at both sides of the situation. But it really, like I said, it is difficult, for staff to support such a variance without any hard and fast data that there's a true deficiency here. We do not want to overbuild surface parking. And there is alternative parking available, be it that it may be 225 feet to the west, where the city has a surface parking lot behind Howard's Party Store. But there is that. There is 10 on-street parking spaces on Portage Street. So, it isn't that there is no other parking alternatives. They're just not, may not be as desirable to the applicant in this case. So, those are my comments. In regards to my field observations, I did go by the refinery on Alvan Road at about 5:40 tonight, and they have 32 parking spaces and only 11 spaces were full. So roughly a third of the spaces were in use after 5 o'clock, which even I was surprised it was that low, because they get traffic off of I-94 as well as local customers. Anyways, that is all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I will open it up for public comment. Anybody out there wishing to speak in favor of the request? Seeing none, how about anybody who wishes to speak against the request? Seeing none, Mr. Eldridge is going to check for call-in comments.
All right, we are checking for call-in comments right now. And I've got no call-in comments for this particular application.
Awesome, thank you. So then that would close the public hearing portion, and we can begin any discussion needed or to ask Mr. Eldridge or the applicant questions. So I know you got your nose in the computer over there, Pete, but I'm curious, if this were on Westnedge at, say, the corner of White's Road and Westnedge, and was a Walgreens, it would be much easier to grant. You wouldn't even have to ask for this request, would you, because of the particular zoning in that sort of area?
Well, actually, that's another node area too, the example you just gave. So we wouldn't want to overbuild surface parking there either.
So maybe that's a bad example. But this is supposed to be different than like that sort of, I'm just assuming, even though it's a node area, I was just assuming along Weston just all a different kind of zoning where you would have more buildings back and more parking available. But this is meant to be more neighborhood and walkable, essentially.
Yeah. So if you're looking at Westnedge, say south of White's Road, that stretch going towards Kilgore, yeah, that's a lot of larger lot commercial. It gets a little bit more suburban, and less urban as you go, get out that way. So, yeah, that would probably be a good example where there is a lot of surface parking lot, not a lot of shared parking.
So and I have two other questions for you. So if this were a business that we said no to and they open and like 3 years down the road, they've come in with hey, every day from this time to this time, like a significant portion of the day, we are just jam-packed and we are parked everywhere possible. Would that be a situation then where the city would be more likely to say, hey, aside from this board where your office would say, hey, we're more likely to support it then because there's actually a demonstrated need for it?
Yes.
Because I heard you saying it's a little speculative, the demand.
Yeah. Yes. Because then there would be vehicle counts. There would be information on how many actual transactional stations they had manned or occupied, I should say, during those peak hours. So they could give, true, employee counts for peak hours as well as customer traffic numbers.
And I think something you said there about the refinery too made me draw back to what he was saying about New Buffalo. I think it was maybe 2 locations. And it made me wonder, like, how many of these types of businesses are in New Buffalo versus Kalamazoo, where we seem to have them kind of everywhere. And I think that maybe is, your comment brought me that. That's not really a question. That's just, your comment brought me to that. Is that just sort of to the speculative nature as to what you're getting at? I feel like I'm hogging the discussion, but I have one more question before I let everybody go. Because I think he was saying if we touch the concrete, like that changes it into a use. Is this a situation where they could just build the building and as long as they don't, not the concrete, the blacktop or whatever, and they don't touch that, do anything with it and just let people park where they may, and they wind up with 32 parking spaces because they just didn't line it, they just did nothing to it, would that be acceptable? Or is it as soon as they start building on the lot, they need to address the parking problem?
So this was a change in use, and when it goes through site plan review, that's when the off-street parking is laid out and shown on the plan. So it's specifically stated and shown on the plan, this is where the customer and employee parking is going to be. That other stretch of property is shown with nothing on it, with no business activity. So this could be problematic because you're right. People might pull in the parking lot and see all that asphalt and think, well, I'll just park over there. So some sort of barriers may need to be put up to, limit folks from driving to other areas of the property.
So it's not just that they can ignore it. Sorry, Shelby, I'm talking over him. So it's not just that they could ignore it and the problem will take care of itself. If people start using it, they need to address it.
Correct.
Okay. I may have other questions, but I feel like I'm hogging it right now, guys. No, somebody else.
I was thinking about, I visit some of the other dispensaries, and Great Lakes down the street from where y'all talking about located at, they don't use all their parking lot. And, I was like, but also I'm kind of on the flip side where I'm looking at, the houses and all that stuff, how bad it looked, and, they wouldn't make it look nice. So it's kind of like, So, it's kind of a mix in between there, like, do we want to have all this parking? But this is also taking away, we got a housing crisis here in Kalamazoo, so it's taking away a lot of houses that could be re-established in those areas. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
See, the GLH thing, because I live in the Edison neighborhood, so I'm familiar with all of this. Like, it's normally not very busy there, but there are like certain times of the week where it is just hopping mad, and like cars are on the street and they're over in the old DHHS building parking. So, like,
they blocked that off.
Well,
They
used to be, but now they're like, they just park everywhere. So yeah. Anybody else have any questions for me?
So this went through site plan review with 16 spaces,
Correct.
and this is now a request to double that number of spaces.
Yes. Yep, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When it went through site plan review, and if this were granted and it were to be planned with 32 spaces, talk about the process where the city looks at the handling of groundwater, of surface water from these parking lots. He was talking about the drainage of stormwater. How does the city review that?
So if, for example, any variance is approved to add more parking, that would then trigger the need for a site plan amendment, and that process, going through that process, the stormwater would be revisited, and then any other site improvements, landscaping, et cetera, it would basically it'd be a whole site plan review, process again. It obviously would be very abbreviated because it's minimal changes to the property, but it would be looked at from all aspects, specifically stormwater, because they'd be identifying impervious surface that's going to remain on the property, where we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the older asphalt areas that are just lying at this point.
Right. So, but there is an engineered manner of handling that stormwater, be it for 16 spaces or 32 spaces.
Yes. The approved site plan that was submitted lays out, covering stormwater management for the existing approved parking.
Just one more question. Thinking about your questions about the unregulated use of the other property where this not granted, that's an interesting question. And how does that in real fact, how does that get regulated in our city? Just the casual use of undeveloped property for parking for a commercial establishment?
Well, it can be problematic. It can lead to enforcement if it's a lot that does not have any approved business on it, and all of a sudden it turns into a commercial parking lot or a vehicle storage lot. Then it becomes a zoning enforcement matter.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Any questions for the applicant? Then that means we can move on to the finding of fact. Who was assigned on this one? Was that you, Gary?
Finding of fact for 1367 Portage Street is as follows. There were 99 notices of public hearing that were sent out. I don't believe there were any responses. There was no call-ins, and there was no one in our audience that was for the project or against the project. James Haas, CEO and owner, spoke to us for about 8 minutes. He kind of gave us a rundown on what he did to develop the site. He demoed approximately 3 homes totaling 10,000 square feet adjacent to the parking lot. He talked about the parking and the 16 spaces. Staff will probably use 13 to 15 spaces. And they also have curbside sales, so they figure they'll need additional parking for that. Tyler Bordeaux talked to us a little bit about a national traffic study. I wasn't real sure about the national traffic study, but he did point out that there would be 50 to 92 customers or potential customers per hour. They also talked about the other companies that were in, I guess it was New Buffalo and some of the other areas surrounding Kalamazoo, and how much more parking they took other than the 16 spaces. It appears that most of the large parking lots north of this location were grandfathered in, and the new zoning ordinances kind of affected the parking spaces, the limited parking spaces. And that is the finding of fact.
Anybody want to second it?
I second that.
Excellent. All right, so we can discuss on that, or should we vote on that? I mean, anybody want to discuss on the actual finding of fact?
No.
I don't need discussion on that. All right, all those in favor of the specific finding of fact, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Yay, that part of this approved. So there's your finding of fact. So, any motion on approval of the request?
I have one more question to staff in regard to the, I guess it would be the stormwater. So with the additional parking spaces, how much more stormwater can we expect on this site? Is there a formula for that?
There is a formula for that, but
Okay,
I don't have.
all right.
I don't have that information, and I would defer to our public services staff
Yeah.
that does the calcs for that, but
Okay,
basically, what's been laid out now to manage the stormwater would essentially have to be doubled if they're going to add that much more parking. So whether it's, and it was going to be above ground, an above ground detention basin on the far end of the property is what they're looking at.
okay. Thank you.
Excuse me. All right. Anybody want to move for approval of the request?
I approve the request.
Any second? Any second to approve?
I second to
You
the
already
approval.
you already moved it. And then we'll do our discussion and vote.
I second to approve the request.
All right. So there's your second. So any discussion on the request from anybody? I guess I'll start then. I'm definitely in the staff's corner on this one with the idea that it is speculative and that the intent of the neighborhood is to be walkable, which is why I wish the neighbors had come out or wrote letters or done something to say that it was a necessity. I'm definitely glad they took down abandoned buildings, and I do hope that it's successful enough that they're back in a couple of years asking for more parking, but I'm going to have a hard time supporting it for those reasons.
Yeah, I would say I feel the same way about that. I was feeling what you were saying because I was thinking the same thing. If they can come back after they prove that all these people are coming there, then I would say that would be better.
I would agree. I think what you guys are doing is great, and you've made some good improvements to the neighborhood and torn some things down. I would just feel better about voting in the affirmative for this if, I just feel that the request for the parking is a little premature.
I don't think I have anything new to add to the good points colleagues here have made. And the only concern I have going forward actually would be the unregulated vacant land that surrounds the property that they're developing. And that's a general concern in the city, and it would be specific to this site. But that doesn't really go to the motion that's on the floor. But I agree with the comments that colleagues here have made.
As well, and I don't think there's anything I could add to it.
Excellent. Mr. Eldridge, you want to take the vote?
And we'll start with McReynolds,
No.
Van den Hamburg,
No.
Holer,
No.
Wark,
No.
Sylvester.
No.
I guess I turned off my microphone. The noes have it then. The request is denied. I do hope to see them back after this is built, and they do have a need for it. Thank you. Where'd the rest of my script go? Just filed it in here. All right. Will the second? Thank you. Oh, yeah. Request number 2. Take it away, Beth.
All right. An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by A&R Kalamazoo Hotel, LLC at 1500 East Kilgore Road in the Commercial Community District. The applicant is requesting the following use variances for a residential redevelopment project. The first use variance is from Chapter 50, 50-4.4, 5B1, and it's the residential uses in the CC district are only permitted in conjunction with a commercial use where the proposed project will be all residential. 2, a use variance from Chapter 50, 50-4.45B2, multifamily units are not permitted in the ground floor occupied space that directly fronts the front property line. Please note that these requests will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for the variances only regarding the items described above.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we bring up the applicant, I just want to mention that these two variance requests should be tied together. So it'll just be one vote, because request number 1 has to do with requiring mixed use on the property. So if, that is directly tied in with request 2 that talks about that occupied space. So that occupied space, that first 15 feet of the buildings facing the street, that's supposed to be space set aside for commercial uses. So the two are intertwined, so there's no reason to vote separately on these variances.
Thank you. That was obviously a question I was going to have, and you anticipated it. All right. Does the applicant want to come up and sign in and explain the request? Make sure you say your name clearly when you say it out loud.
And slow so I can write it down correctly, please.
Okay, my name is Rachit Dhingra, R-A-C-H-I-T. I'm from Odyssey Hotels and the owner of A&R Kalamazoo Hotel, which is currently Residence Inn Hotel on 1500 Kilgore Avenue. As Tony had pointed out, there's a shortage of apartments in city of Kalamazoo. There was a shortage of about 7,000 units. And about a year ago, we had met with Mary Balkema from the Kalamazoo County Housing Division and David, the mayor of the city, and they saw a great opportunity for us to convert this hotel into multifamily usage. So that's how the genesis started on the project. And most recently, there was a meeting by the Kalamazoo County commissioners to do a grant for millage dollars for the project that was awarded just last week. So what we're planning on doing is converting the hotel once it leaves the Residence Inn flag from Marriott into a multifamily use. And because it's going to be a multifamily use, it's already set up like a multifamily use facility. We were hoping that the mixed use would suffice, but after working with Pete, it was pointed to us that the zoning needed some use variances, and hence we're here for that purposes. So.
Excellent.
For us not to get those the zone variances will put hardship on the project, because the funding for the project to be successful, we would have to add commercial use on Kilgore Road, where there is no need for commercial use and housing already exists there. So it's already set up as a housing development, and Kilgore is a main free road that intersects Portage, and there is no commercial development in that area. So mixed use won't apply. Apparently this is stuck between, the zoning rules are applicable to this location, but also other locations, but this is a unique example, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pete, you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I'll just make a few comments here. So the applicant, Ratchet, and his business partner have, they went to our project review meeting and presented this project. And at first blush, we thought this was going to be a very straightforward transition, and didn't think we were going to run into any roadblocks with the zoning ordinance. But then as we looked at it deeper, we realized that categorically it was moving from, because it's an extended stay, it's technically a hotel now, which is a commercial use, and it's transitioning to apartments, so it's multifamily residential. So, and those categories, commercial and residential, are separated in the zoning ordinance. So this had to be viewed as a change in use, even though they're living units now, and they'll be living units, at the end of this process, presuming this continues to move forward. So that's where these, and then because it's in a commercial zone district, you had these standards that now apply. If there's a change in use and a property has to meet the current standards for that commercial community zone district, the mixed use requirement comes into play, meaning that there's an element of commercial in addition to the residential, and that the front of the buildings closest to Kilgore have to have commercial space, or commercial space and commercial usage within at least the first 15 feet of the front of each of those buildings. In practicality, because this was built as extended stay units, they have multiple buildings, they have different floor plans from studios to, is it up to 2 bedrooms?
Yeah, there's some units with 2 bedrooms, and the rest are all studios.
Yeah, so
and also there is, like, right on Kilgore Road, where the building, the property is spread up into multiple buildings, and the units that there are multiple units in one building, and the buildings that face Kilgore Road, there's actually a driveway right in front of that extends into another property next to us. So really, we can't put any commercial use at that location, because that's a thorough passway. That's before Kilgore Road. That's an inner road too. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to add
Thank
that.
you,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it, you know, it created this unique circumstance, and that kind of, you know, gets at, you know, the first criteria, which talks about the literal enforcement of the terms and provisions of the ordinance. So here we are trying to apply these commercial standards to structures that were built in 1989, essentially for, you know, for dwelling units. So you would, you know, effectively have to, you know, cause significant renovation to each one of those front buildings in order to meet those commercial standards, which does present a hardship for the applicant and the organization, and would eliminate. Right now, there's 83 units that they're looking at transitioning into apartments, and most of those, you know, a large number rather, would be lost if these commercial standards were applied. So, you know, I wanted to point that out. Also point out that, you know, the level of renovation to make this transition is also very minimal as far as the, you know, the upgrades. And I think I talked a little bit about that in the staff report, that they would, you know, be doing some remodeling to the units, but essentially the square footage stays the same. They already have full bathrooms in them. They already have, you know, a kitchen area per se,
yeah.
which will probably be upgraded a little bit. But they, you know, they function like efficiency apartments already. And so, you know, so it's, you know, so again, application of commercial standards, you know, creates a hardship on making this transition. And then the ordinance also goes on to say in the commercial zone for multifamily, there needs to be like a outdoor recreation space. And because this was an extended stay, they had a clubhouse or have a clubhouse, a pool area, some green space behind that. So they actually meet that criteria for having a multifamily use, you know, in this commercial zone district. And that, you know, some of that space will remain, a part of the clubhouse, I believe, will turn into some additional apartments.
Right.
So, so again, you know, there's a lot of synergy with what's proposed. It's a good reuse of this extended stay hotel. And my last comment is, you know, there was a brief discussion about should this be rezoned. And really, the use variance is the best option here because, you know, as this area grows and there's more development pressure at I-94 and Portage, this property still remains in a commercial zone. It could, you know, it could be redeveloped, you know, 20 years from now for some more viable commercial use that's more appropriate for this interchange area. This use variance is just to allow the existing structures that are there now to be repurposed and to create housing units which we can use immediately. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I've got 49 seconds here. But these are going to be affordable housing units. That's the key thing. And we are doing 80% of these units are going to be 60% AMI. So it's a great addition to the community for adding affordable housing that there's a big shortage of. And that's why the city and the housing authority were in favor of this project. So just wanted to add that.
I think we should give him more time because Pete took up quite a bit of his time there.
I thought he was done talking.
We still got 14 seconds
I mean,
left.
if you would like more time, you can have more
No,
time.
I'm good.
I mean,
that's it.
I think that Pete kind of covered probably
Pretty
everything
much,
you
yeah.
would want to have said anyway.
Pete did a much better job than I did. Let's put it this way.
No, this isn't going to be a prop. Shouldn't say that.
I have a question.
You have a question?
Yes.
I mean, nobody's out there going to speak for or against it, so if you want to ask him now, then ask him now.
Oh,
I don't have a
okay.
problem with
All
it.
right, before you leave, okay. All right, Mr. Dagra, I appreciate you saying towards the end about the goal is affordable housing, and I'm doing the finding of facts, so I've got it in the notes that you spoke with Mary Balkema and Mr. Anderson. I'd like a little bit more clarity on the phrases that you used, the terms, just because I'm not as familiar with them. But I really got a lot out of the project summary overview that was in the packet. It was saying that, you've got 48 studio units at 416 square feet for a maximum of $963 per month for a studio and $1,032 per month for a one-bedroom unit. So your studios are 416 square feet and the one-bedrooms are 532. So we need this housing, but to me, that just doesn't seem very affordable.
These are based on the published rates that exist that were provided to us. So those are the ones we used.
Okay. All right. And you were saying something about 80% of the units are 60%. I didn't quite get that.
80% of the units are going to be 60% average medium income.
Average median income?
Right, yeah. So basically, we're trying to comply with, the MISHDA and the federal rules and regulation and how affordable housing works. So that's how this project's been designed.
80%.
And that's why we got the millage grant, just based on those contributions and doing the, analysis for, capital that has to be put into the project, return, and all those things. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to assume there's nobody else out there who wants to say anything in favor. We'll get to them. I don't see anybody who's going to say anything against it, so Pete's going to check the call-ins. And then we'll definitely get to there, because I had questions for Pete as well.
Okay, we're checking right now. And for this public hearing, we do not have any call-ins for this particular application.
Excellent. Seems like we have some more discussion we wanted before we move on to the finding of facts. You had questions?
No, not this time.
All right, that's what you can. We'll close the public hearing portion. We'll move on to some discussion and then the finding of fact. It almost looks like, Pete, when I look at the map here of the properties within, 300 feet, it's like everything on one side of Portage and everything on the other side of Portage is all like our whatever, except for the small little bit here where there's like a auto mechanic shop and a sandwich place at like Paddington, Lakeway, that corner. And then this one little property here by the highway. It almost feels like if we give them the use variance, whenever they decide to rezone things, they're just gonna go ahead and carve that right into the R district somehow. And I'm guessing, and maybe you can speak this, so I guess my question then is, this was originally a commercial space, and I presume that that's just kind of carried forward year after, or every time they've updated the zoning, even though it is a little bit of an island on its own here.
It is a little bit of an island. I'm looking at this map. I believe the MDOT offices, which are like diagonal across the street,
Yep,
I believe that is also in the same commercial zone district. It's not,
I see.
it's not clear on here.
Oh, it's this little weird
Yeah,
square
because
cutout
we're looking
of
at a
the-
black and white zoning
Yeah.
map here. But so what you have is, you've got the MDOT offices, you've got this particular site, with the extended stay hotel, and then directly next to it on the east side is a traditional hotel,
Yeah.
a multi-story hotel. And as was mentioned, that the drive for that other hotel wraps
Oh,
around
yeah.
in front of this one. So there's some interconnectedness that will remain.
I see. I don't really have anything else to ask on it.
I have a question. Is this hotel going to take Section 8 or take people living there based on income?
That's what the 60% AMI is for.
That's
And-
what that is?
yeah.
Oh,
And then
okay.
also I wanted to add, you thought the rents were high, but utility, electricity, and all that stuff is covered because
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's all centrally located, so that's how. Yeah,
Includes
yeah.
all utilities?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it seems high, but that's how the calculations
Okay.
are done.
Okay.
So
That helps greatly.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And that makes sense, given that
Right.
everything is interconnected
Right,
right
because
now.
everything is right now interconnected for a hotel, so we're not looking into putting different meters or anything like that. It's just basically included in the rent. That's the max rent we can charge, so.
Yep.
Excellent.
I do have a question. Will you be financing this using low-income housing tax credits?
No, not any federal dollars. We might be using the home dollars. We're working with the city of Kalamazoo, so that's in process to get like a pilot program. So we're in the process of trying to obtain that. But the millage grant was awarded, and then we're also using some financing from Kalamazoo Foundation for the
I
project.
see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody want to make a motion on the finding of fact? Beth, she's going to have to read it, and then you can second it.
All right. Okay, not using control. Not using control.
I feel like you're putting me to shame. Mine were so half-hearted when I did them, and yours are very detailed.
Well,
She is.
all right, we're ready.
Go
Okay.
for it.
All right, I move that the finding of facts for 1500 East Kilgore Road shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing, date March 27th, 2024, in the agenda packet staff provided for this request. 19 notices of public hearing were sent and 0 responses were received. There were no calling comments, and no one spoke in favor or in opposition. Mr. Rashid Dagra is the owner of Odyssey Hotels, and he spoke on behalf of the project. General basic overview is that currently it's a residence and owned by Marriott, and that operating license is going to be coming to an end. Mr. Dagra is looking to transition this location from an 83-unit extended stay hotel and converting it into individual apartments. All right. This would result in 48 416 square foot studio units, 14 large studio units at 440 square feet, and 21 one-bedroom units at 532 square feet. The complex already has the required outdoor space with a swimming pool, small basketball court, and outdoor seating. Mr. Dagra met with Ms. Balkema and Mr. Anderson regarding the housing shortage, also met with the City Commission. We're looking to have this converted over into a multifamily use. There's some unique circumstances because of this, also the location being commercial. Really, it's viewed as a change in use, commercial zones, district, unique circumstances. The level of renovations needed is minimal. 80% of the units are going to be at 60% of the average median income, and these units include all of the utilities. Let's see. Mr. Duggars, they're not using any federal low housing credits. There was a millage grant that was awarded, and they've been also working with the Kalamazoo Foundation. And I conclude with the finding of fact.
Pilot on this, if you want to add that, and maybe we might be using home dollars.
Yeah, that was, yeah, just, and we'll clarify it in the meeting minutes too, but it was the Kalamazoo County Housing Authority that.
Right, that's the millage
that
grant, yeah.
has approved the millage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so then she'll just clarify it in the minutes
Yeah.
and we'll be good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelby's got it over
Okay,
here.
thank you.
Any second to the motion on the finding of fact?
I second.
Thank you. I don't know that we're going to have a ton of discussion necessarily, but this is maybe nothing to do with this. I noticed on the map, what is an M1 for zoning?
Manufacturing limited, so it's like light manufacturing.
I'm trying to imagine what is in that spot at like Old Kilgore meets East Kilgore, right there by the highway. It's like it's like the auction place or something, isn't it? Well, I think that's in this CC area, but I think like right here, isn't that like?
It was a hotel there.
It's it was Doubleday Printing, and it's
Okay.
now Bittergy,
Okay,
so it's an online auction site.
okay. I mean, I know there's more M over here, but just kind of jumped
Yep.
out from all these Rs. Any other discussion on the finding of fact? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the specific finding of fact, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. I did not see anybody that looked like they were saying no, so I'll take it as we've got no no's. Does anybody want to make a motion and a second thereafter regarding the pending request? As Pete said, please just make the motion of them both together.
I approve of the motion for both of them together.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion on approving or not approving the motion and the variance?
Well, I will be supporting this, and I was really interested in this application, and I think, and I trust my colleagues are as well. My office is about a quarter of a mile from this location on Airview Boulevard. It's in the city of Kalamazoo, adjacent to the former Stryker headquarters.
Okay.
And I've been in that location for 14 years and have seen some of the hotels in that area transition as that industry continues to evolve. And of course, we saw a couple of weeks ago the fire destruction of the Days Inn right next to my office, which was also housing quite a number of low-income families, although it had gone down the census there quite a bit. In the meantime, we've seen a number of families now moving into the Country Inn and Suites on the Kilgore Road loop behind there. But those are not apartment properties. Those are hotels, and they don't offer the management and the services and the support staff that you would see in affordable housing communities such as was described to us. Nor is it regulated by the city as a rental housing property. Those are regulated as hotels. And so I'm gratified to see a hotel making this transition to become part of the permanent affordable housing stock in Kalamazoo. And it's going to provide much more stable housing for low and moderate income families. But we need that too. So I'm real supportive, and it's really interesting to see that migration of this property that formerly served a purpose. These kind of extended stay hotels were more needed in the economy 25 years ago, less so now in the era of remote working, when we have fewer visiting workers living in these extended stay hotels. It's just not the current world. So really interesting application, and I'm real supportive of it.
Excellent points, Alan. I'll be supporting it as well.
Yeah, I was thinking, you don't really need to say anything when the first guy says everything you'd want to say. And no, it's fine. In the application, and Pete, I think they made all the points that I would have made to some extent or another, which is also why I would be supporting it. Me too. Or not would be, why I will be.
Okay, we'll roll call vote this. We'll start with McReynolds,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Holder,
Yes.
Wark,
Yes.
Sylvester.
Yes.
Excellent. There were no no's amongst us. The request is approved then. Congratulations.
That's our goal, to really, convert that hotel into affordable housing managed by a good management company so we can provide a good service out there. Yeah, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see nothing under discussion or action items, reports, or reports, so I guess that brings us to adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, last time.